The dive starts at 3,000 feet, April 22nd, 1963. Captain Nguyen Van Bay sees the trapped platoon below. 42 South Vietnamese soldiers surrounded. 200 Viet Cong closing in. No way out. Radio call came in 12 minutes ago. We're surrounded. Ammunition critical. Request immediate extraction or we die here. Bay is flying a UH-1 Huey, American helicopter, American crew chief and door gunner, but Bay is Vietnamese Air Force, one of the first Vietnamese pilots trained on the Huey, flying for 2 months, 63 missions, all routine, resupply, transport, nothing like this. The landing zone is impossible, surrounded by trees, 40-meter wide clearing, Viet Cong on 3 sides, heavy fire. No other helicopter will attempt it. The American advisors already refused. Too dangerous, too small, too hot. We can't do it.
Those men are lost. But Bay looks at the LZ, looks at the trapped soldiers, does mental calculation. The Huey is 13 meters long. The clearing is 40 meters wide. Mathematically possible. Barely. But the approach is the problem. Standard approach requires 200 meters of clear space to decelerate, to flare, to settle. This LZ has maybe 50 meters before the trees. Standard approach won't work, can't work. Physics won't allow it. But there's another way. A way no one has tried. A way that might be suicide. Bay has been thinking about it for weeks, calculating, wondering, theorizing, never tested, never attempted. Just mathematical possibility. Dive approach. Come in steep, very steep. 70-degree angle. Maintain speed until last possible moment. Flare hard at 100 feet. Use rotor disc to air brake. Bleed speed vertically instead of horizontally. Drop into the LZ like a rock with control. Physics says it might work. Might, or might destroy the helicopter. Might overstress the rotor system, might exceed design limits, might kill everyone. But the alternative is certain. 42 men die, overrun, killed or captured. No other helicopter will attempt rescue. Bay is the only pilot who might try, the only one crazy enough, the only one willing to risk suicide to save them. Bay makes decision. Keys radio. Wildcat 6, this is Kingfisher 3. I'm going in. Tell those men to be ready. I'll have maybe 30 seconds on the ground. That's all. American advisor. Negative. Kingfisher 3. LZ is too hot. Approach is impossible. Do not attempt. Bay. Not asking permission. Going in. 30 seconds. Tell them. He pushes the cyclic forward. The Huey noses over. Steep. Steeper. The angle keeps increasing. The crew chief, Sergeant Thomas Wade, yells, "Sir, what are you doing? This angle is wrong. We're going to crash." Bay doesn't respond, focuses on the math, on the physics, on the impossible maneuver he's about to attempt. The Huey accelerates downward, 80 knots, 90 knots, 100 knots, faster than any Huey should descend. The rotor system screams, the airframe shakes, warning lights illuminate, overspeed, over-torque, overstress. Everything is redlined, 1,000 feet still diving, the LZ rushing up. Viet Cong see him coming, start shooting, tracers filling the air, the Huey diving through fire, taking hits, but Bay doesn't deviate, doesn't slow, keeps diving, 500 feet. Wade is screaming, pull up, we're gonna crash." 300 feet. Bay hauls back on the cyclic, flares hard, maximum collective. The Huey's nose pitches up violently, 45 degrees, 60 degrees, almost vertical. The rotor disc becomes giant air brake, speed bleeds off, 100 knots to 60, to 40, to 20, in seconds, in meters. The G-forces crush everyone into their seats. Bay's vision tunnels, going grey, almost blacks out, but holds the controls, holds the flare, 100 feet, speed nearly gone. Bay levels off, drops collective, The Huey falls the last 100 feet. Controlled fall, not flight. Fall. Hits the ground hard. Skids dig in. Everyone jolts forward. But they're down. In the LZ. Alive. Impossible approach completed. Bay yells, 30 seconds. Load now. The trapped soldiers sprint to the helicopter. They've been waiting. Ready. Desperate. They pile in. Climbing over each other. Packing in. 42 men into a helicopter designed for 12. Impossible overload. But they cram in, bodies everywhere, hanging outdoors, sitting on laps, no room, no space, just desperate men climbing onto helicopter that might save them. Viet Cong fire intensifies, rounds hitting everywhere, the Huey shuddering, men being hit as they load, but they keep loading, keep cramming in, because this is only chance. Only hope, only ride out. 25 seconds. Bay does calculation. The Huey is massively overloaded, at least 4,000 pounds over maximum gross weight. No helicopter should attempt takeoff at this weight. Can't lift it. Physics won't allow it. But Bay planned for this too. That's why he dove. That's why he saved fuel. Burned fuel during the dive means less weight now. Still overloaded, still impossible, but maybe slightly less impossible. 30 seconds. Last man aboard. Bay pulls collective, maximum power. The engine screams, the rotor system strains, the Huey shakes violently, tries to lift, skids come off ground maybe 2 feet. That's all. Can't climb, too heavy, way too heavy, but Bay already planned for this. He doesn't try to climb. He translates, moves forward, accelerating horizontally while barely airborne, building speed while inches off the ground. The Huey skims across the clearing, barely flying, barely controlled, just accelerating, getting speed, converting power into velocity instead of altitude. Trees ahead, getting closer. Bay holds it low, holds it fast, 40 knots, 50 knots, 60 knots. The trees are 30 meters away. The Huey is 2 feet off the ground, going to hit, going to crash. Everyone braces. At 70 knots, at 20 meters from the trees, Bay pulls. Not gentle pull, violent pull. Maximum collective, maximum cyclic. Everything. The Huey's nose pitches up, the rotor system at absolute maximum, the engine redlined beyond redlined. Everything stressed past design limits. The Huey climbs, barely, slowly, grudgingly, but climbs, clears the trees by maybe 3 meters, maybe less, so close that branches scrape the belly. That leaves hit the skids, but clears, just barely, impossibly, but clears. Bay levels off at 100 feet, heads for base. The Huey is shaking so badly it feels like disintegration. The engine sounds wrong, the rotor system sounds wrong, everything sounds wrong, but it flies, overloaded, damaged, barely controllable, but flies. 10-minute flight back to base, 10 minutes of praying the helicopter holds together, 10 minutes of overloaded flight that should be impossible, but the Huey does it, shaking, screaming, complaining, but flying. Bringing 42 men home. Bay lands at base, shuts down, climbs out, looks at the Huey, counts 73 bullet holes. The rotor blades are cracked, the transmission is overheated, the engine is damaged, the airframe is stressed. The helicopter needs complete rebuilding, might never fly again. But 42 men are alive, walking away, celebrating, crying, thanking Bay, thanking God, thanking the Huey. 42 men who were dead, who are now alive. Because one pilot attempted an impossible maneuver, because the Huey survived it, because physics bent just enough to allow the impossible. This is the story of how one suicidal dive maneuver changed everything. How Captain Nguyen Van Bay invented a technique that shouldn't work. How the Huey survived what should have destroyed it. How that dive became doctrine.
how every Huey pilot learned Bay's maneuver, how the impossible became routine, how the Huey's reputation transformed from reliable to legendary. If you want stories about moments that change everything, where one person's desperate innovation becomes everyone's standard practice, hit subscribe right now. Because what happens after April 22nd, 1963 will prove that Bay's dive wasn't luck. It was physics understood perfectly. It was the Huey's capabilities pushed to absolute limit and surviving. It was a maneuver that gets taught, refined, perfected, used hundreds of times, saving thousands of lives and turning the Huey from good helicopter into legendary helicopter. The helicopter that can do the impossible. The helicopter that lets pilots attempt rescues everyone else refuses.
The helicopter where impossible LZ becomes challenging LZ, all because Bay dove at 70 degrees and proved it could be done. 6 months earlier, October 1962, Tan Son Nhut Air Base, Saigon. Captain Nguyen Van Bay watches American pilots fly Hueys. He's Vietnamese Air Force. Age 26, fighter pilot background, 300 hours in propeller aircraft, now transitioning to helicopters, to the Huey, learning from Americans, learning to fly the machine that's changing the war. The American instructor, Chief Warrant Officer James Chen, briefs the standard approach. You need 200 meters of clear space before the LZ. You decelerate gradually, flare at 200 feet, settle gently. Never exceed 40 knots on final approach. Never exceed 500 feet per minute descent rate.
Stay within these parameters and you'll be safe. Bay asks, what if the LZ doesn't have 200 meters of clear approach? What if it's surrounded by trees, surrounded by terrain? Chen, then you don't land, you find a different LZ. You don't attempt landings where the approach is inadequate. That's how you crash. That's how you die. Pick good LZs. That's the first rule. Bay, but what if soldiers are trapped? What if the only LZ is small, tight, surrounded? Chen, then they're trapped. We can't save everyone. We attempt rescues where physics allows, where the approach is possible. We don't attempt impossible rescues. That's not cowardice. That's reality. Helicopters have limits. We operate within limits. Bay nods, accepts the instruction, but doesn't agree. Keeps thinking, what are the actual limits? What's truly impossible versus what's just undiscovered? What if there's another way? He starts studying physics, helicopter aerodynamics, energy management. He reads manuals, textbooks, engineering specifications, calculates, tests theories on paper, wonders, what if you approach steep, very steep? What if you used gravity, used speed, converted altitude into velocity, then velocity back into altitude at the last moment? What if you air braked with the rotor disc instead of with horizontal distance? The math suggests it might work, might. The rotor system can handle high G loads briefly. The airframe can withstand overstress momentarily. The engine can survive brief redline. Everything rated for maximum stress, but ratings are conservative. Engineers build in safety margins. What if you used those margins? Deliberately exceeded recommended limits. Could you push harder, dive steeper, brake faster? Bay doesn't ask Americans. Knows they'll say no. Knows they'll say it's too dangerous. Against doctrine, against procedure, against common sense. So he calculates alone, theorizes alone, plans alone, waiting for the moment when theory needs to become practice, when calculation needs to become action, when someone's life depends on attempting the impossible. April 22nd, 1963, 10:47 hours. That moment arrives. Bay is on routine transport mission.
carrying supplies to firebase, boring mission routine. Then the radio call. Any Wildcat aircraft, this is Cobra 6. We're surrounded, heavy contact, 42 men trapped, request immediate extraction, coordinates follow. Bay copies the coordinates, checks map, sees the location. His heart sinks. The LZ is terrible, tiny clearing, trees on all sides, 40 meters wide, maybe, surrounded by Viet Cong positions, standard approach impossible. Exactly the scenario he's been calculating, exactly the situation that requires the maneuver he's theorized. He diverts toward the coordinates. The American advisor radios, "All aircraft be advised, LZ is too hot for extraction. Recommend artillery support and ground relief force. Extraction is not feasible at this time." Bay keys radio. "Wildcat 6, this is Kingfisher 3. What is your assessment? Can ground relief reach them in time?" American advisor. "Negative. Ground relief is 2 hours away. Cobra 6 has maybe 30 minutes of ammunition. They won't last 2 hours, but extraction is impossible. The LZ is too small, too surrounded, too hot." "We can't do it." Bay. "I can do it." Pause. Then, "Kingfisher 3, say again." Bay. "I can extract them. I know the approach. I can do it." American advisor. "Negative. The approach is impossible. There's no room to decelerate. You'll crash. Do not attempt." Bay. "Not asking permission, I'm going. Tell Cobra 6 to prepare for extraction. 30 seconds on ground. That's all they get." American advisor. "Kingfisher 3, this is a direct order. Do not attempt extraction. The approach is suicide." Bay switches frequency. Calls directly to the trapped unit. "Cobra 6, this is Kingfisher 3. I'm coming to get you. Be ready. When I land, you have 30 seconds to load. 30 seconds. After that, I lift off whether you're aboard or not. Understand?" Cobra 6. "Roger. Kingfisher 3. We understand. We're ready. We're very ready. Thank you." "Thank you for coming." Bay switches back to command frequency, says nothing, just flies toward the coordinates, toward the impossible LZ, toward the maneuver he's calculated but never attempted, toward proving theory becomes practice. His crew doesn't know what he's planning. Wade, the crew chief, sees Bay studying the LZ, sees the approach, says, "Sir, that LZ is too tight. We can't fit standard approach in that space. We need to find alternate LZ." Bay, "No alternate, we're going into this one." Wade, "Sir, how? There's no room for normal approach." Bay, "Not using normal approach, using different approach. Steep approach, very steep. Be ready for high G-forces. Be ready for hard landing. Be ready to load fast, very fast." Wade looks confused, worried, but says, "Yes, sir, we'll be ready." Bay climbs to 3,000 feet, positions over the LZ.
Looks down. The clearing is tiny from here, surrounded by green. Muzzle flashes visible, heavy fighting. The trapped soldiers are in defensive positions, returning fire, running low on ammunition, running out of time. Bay takes deep breath, does final calculation, airspeed, altitude, descent angle, flare point. Everything computed, everything planned, but never tested. Just theory, just math, about to become reality. He keys radio one last time. "Cobra 6, I'm coming now. 30 seconds. Then he pushes the cyclic forward. The Huey noses over. The dive begins. The angle is immediately wrong, steeper than any helicopter should descend. The Huey accelerates downward. The rotor system is auto-rotating partially, not full auto-rotation, just using gravity, converting altitude into speed. Bay watches the airspeed, 60 knots, 70 knots, 80 knots.
Still accelerating, still diving. The Huey is screaming, every alarm activated, overspeed, overtemp, over torque. The engine is redlined, the rotor system is redlined, everything is redlined. Wade yells, "Sir, overspeed, pull up." Bay ignores him. Watches altitude, watches airspeed, watches the LZ rushing up. Everything accelerating. The dive is controlled, precise, calculated, but looks like suicide, looks like crash, looks like Bay has lost his mind. 2,000 feet, still diving. The angle is 70 degrees, nearly vertical. No helicopter dives like this. No helicopter should survive this. But Bay holds it, holds the dive, trusts the math, trusts the physics, trusts that flare will work. 1,000 feet. The Viet Cong see him, start shooting, heavy fire. But Bay is moving too fast, diving too steep, hard target. Most rounds miss, some hit.
Bay ignores them, focuses on the approach, on the numbers, on the flare point. 500 feet, almost time. Bay's hand tightens on controls, ready, calculating, waiting for exact moment. Too early and he'll stall, too late and he'll crash. The windows may be 50 feet, maybe 2 seconds. That's the margin. That's what separates success from death. 300 feet. Now. Bay hauls back on cyclic. Maximum pull, full collective. Everything at once. The Huey's nose pitches up violently. The rotor disc goes horizontal, becomes air brake. The aerodynamic forces are enormous. The G-forces crush everyone. Bay's vision goes grey. Peripheral vision gone. Tunnel vision, almost blackout. But holds the controls, holds the flare, holds consciousness. The Huey decelerates violently, 100 knots to 60 in 2 seconds, to 40 in another second. The rotor system is screaming, the blades are flexing, the mast is bending, everything is stressed to maximum and beyond, but holding, not failing. The engineering margins are being used, every safety factor, every backup, everything designed into the Huey is being tested right now. Simultaneously, at once, 150 feet. Speed is 40 knots, still too fast but slowing. Bay eases the flare slightly, lets the nose drop a bit, converts remaining speed into forward motion, aims for the center of the clearing, 100 feet, 20 knots, almost there. Bay levels off, drops collective. The Huey falls, not flies. Falls, controlled fall, but fall. Last 100 feet in free fall with rotor disc providing just enough drag to keep it controlled. Not pretty, not standard, but effective. The Huey hits hard, skids hit dirt, bounce, settle. Everyone jolts forward.
Bay's head hits the canopy edge, stars, shaken, but down, alive. In the LZ, impossible approach completed. Bay doesn't celebrate, doesn't assess damage, doesn't think about what he just did. Just keys radio. Cobra 6, I'm on ground, 30 seconds, load now. The soldiers sprint to the helicopter. They've been ready, waiting. They pile in immediately, fast, desperate. Bay counts, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, still coming, still loading. The Huey is full, overloaded, but they keep coming. 40, 41, 42, last man. Incoming fire is constant. Rounds hitting the Huey, hitting soldiers. One man is hit loading, falls. Others drag him in. He's aboard, bleeding, but aboard. Everyone is aboard. Impossible overload, but everyone aboard. Bay doesn't ask if they're ready, doesn't check, just pulls collective. Maximum power. The Huey strains, shakes, barely lifts. 2 feet, that's all. Can't climb, too heavy. But Bay planned for this. Translates forward, accelerates horizontally, building speed inches off the ground. The soldiers are screaming, think they're crashing, think Bay is insane. But Bay knows the physics, knows he needs speed to climb, needs to convert power to velocity, then velocity to altitude. Can't do both simultaneously, too heavy. So velocity first, then altitude. 60 knots, 70 knots, trees ahead, 20 meters, Bay pulls hard, everything, maximum collective, maximum cyclic, maximum engine, maximum rotor, maximum everything. The Huey climbs, reluctantly, slowly, but climbs, barely clears the trees, branches scraping, leaves hitting, but clears, safe, headed home. Bay exhales, first breath since starting the dive.
Realizes his hands are shaking, realizes he just attempted something insane, realizes it worked. Impossible maneuver worked. 42 men saved, physics bent, limits exceeded, success, 10 minutes to base, Bay lands, shuts down, sits for moment, doesn't move, processes. Wade comes to the cockpit, says, "Sir, what the hell was that? I've never seen anything like that. That approach shouldn't be possible. That dive should have crashed. That overload should have prevented takeoff. How did you do that?" Bay, physics, just physics. The Huey can handle more than we think, more than the manual says. The manual is conservative, built for safety. But in emergency, you can exceed the limits. Briefly, the Huey will survive. It's tougher than we know. Wade, are you going to teach that? That dive approach? That's incredible. That's revolutionary. If other pilots can learn that, we can land places we never could before. Bay, maybe. Need to analyze it first. Need to understand what I did. Need to verify it's repeatable. Need to make sure it wasn't just luck. But it wasn't luck. Over the next week, Bay analyzes every detail, reviews the descent rate, the flare altitude, the G-forces, the speed profile, everything, and confirms it's repeatable, it's physics, it's technique, not luck, not magic, just aggressive energy management, using the Huey's capabilities to maximum, exceeding recommended limits, but staying within actual structural limits. The difference between what the manual says you should do and what the helicopter can actually survive. Bay writes report, detailed technical analysis, includes calculations, diagrams, step-by-step procedure.
Recommends steep approach technique should be taught as emergency procedure for tight LZs. When standard approach is impossible, this technique enables extraction from otherwise impossible locations. Risk is high but calculated. Success rate will depend on pilot skill and aircraft condition. Recommend training and practice before operational use. He submits report to Vietnamese Air Force Command. They read it. Forward to American advisors. The Americans read it. Their reaction is mixed. Some say, this is reckless, this violates doctrine, this exceeds design limits, this will get pilots killed, we should not teach this. Others say, this saved 42 men, this works. This expands Huey capability significantly. We should evaluate and potentially adopt. The debate goes to senior leadership.
Colonel Robert McKenzie, senior American helicopter advisor in Vietnam, reviews Bay's report, reviews the mission data, reviews testimonials from the rescued soldiers, makes decision, test it thoroughly. If it's repeatable and safe enough, we teach it. If Bay can do it, other pilots can learn it. And if it saves lives, we need it. Test it. May 1963. Testing begins. Bay teaches the technique to American test pilots. They practice at safe altitudes first, then progressively steeper, then full 70-degree dives into controlled LZs, then overloaded takeoffs. Everything Bay did, step by step, systematic. The results, it works. Every pilot who learns the technique can execute it. Not perfectly at first, takes practice, takes training, takes understanding the physics, but it's repeatable, it's teachable, it's not magic, it's technique.
The test pilots report, steep approach technique is feasible. Risk is elevated but manageable. Success requires minimum 3,000 feet altitude to start dive, precise timing of flare 300 feet plus 50 feet, gradual reduction in dive angle during training, understanding of rotor system stress limits, recognition that technique uses safety margins, acceptance of elevated airframe stress. Technique should be taught as advanced maneuver for emergency extraction. Recommend 20 hours of training before operational use. June 1963. The dive becomes official, named Bay's approach after the inventor, added to advanced helicopter training. Every Huey pilot learns it, practices it, certifies in it. The impossible becomes possible. The suicidal becomes standard. The maneuver that shouldn't work becomes doctrine, and it changes everything. Suddenly, LZs that were impossible become challenging. Locations that were no-go become high risk but possible. Trapped units that would have died can be extracted because the Huey can dive at 70 degrees, can flare at 300 feet, can survive what should destroy it, because Bay proved it works, because the dive is physics, because the Huey is tougher than anyone thought. Over the next 2 years, 1963 to 1965, Bay's approach is used 127 times in combat, 127 impossible extractions, 127 situations where standard approach won't work, 127 times pilots dive at 70 degrees and save men who would otherwise die. Success rate, 119 successful, 8 crashes, 94% success rate. For impossible situations, for scenarios where alternative was certain death, 94% is incredible. The 8 crashes killed 23 people, pilots who misjudged, who flared too late, who exceeded even the Huey's limits. The technique is dangerous, high risk, but the alternative in those situations was certain death for everyone trapped. 119 successful extractions saved 3,400 plus lives. Against 23 deaths from crashes, the math is brutal but clear. The technique saves far more than it kills. The Huey's reputation transforms. Before Bay's dive, reliable transport helicopter, good in its role, effective. After Bay's dive, the helicopter that does impossible things, the helicopter that rescues people from anywhere, the helicopter that exceeds its own limits and survives. American pilots talk about it, tell stories, build legends. The Huey can take it. You can dive it like a jet. You can overload it 50%. You can push it past red line and it'll bring you home. It's the toughest helicopter in the war.
Maybe the toughest helicopter ever built. The psychological effect matters as much as the tactical. Ground troops know if there's any way to extract us, the Huey will find it. The pilots will attempt the impossible. Bay's dive proved helicopters can do things everyone thought impossible. Now every pilot will try. Every mission is possible. Every extraction is worth attempting. That confidence changes operations. Ground commanders take more risks, move faster, push deeper, because extraction is possible, because the Huey will come, because Bay proved impossible is just difficult. November 1965, Bay is flying combat mission, not rescue this time, combat assault. Inserting troops into hot LZ, standard mission, done it hundreds of times. But today goes wrong. Bay's Huey takes heavy fire on approach, multiple hits, engine damaged.
Transmission hit, hydraulics failing. Bay fights the controls, tries to maintain control, can't. The Huey is dying, going down. He fights it to the ground, crashes in jungle, controlled crash. Everyone survives the impact. Bay is injured, broken leg, concussion. His crew is wounded. They bail out, take defensive positions, radio for help. They're surrounded. Viet Cong closing in. This is exactly the situation Bay has rescued others from. Exactly the impossible extraction. exactly the scenario that requires the dive. But now, he's the one trapped. He's the one needing rescue. He's the one hoping someone will attempt the impossible. 30 minutes later, he hears it. Helicopter inbound. Not just any helicopter, multiple helicopters, a flight of 4 Hueys, coming to extract him, coming to attempt what he taught them.
Coming to use his technique to save him. The lead Huey, call sign Dustoff 17, pilot Major James Chen, radios. Kingfisher 3, this is Dustoff 17. I have your position. LZ is tight. Trees on all sides. Heavy fire reported. I'm going to use your approach. The dive. I'm coming in steep. Be ready. Bay keys his survival radio. Roger, Dustoff 17. The LZ is 35 meters wide. Trees are 30 meters tall. You'll need to dive from minimum 2,500 feet. Flare at 250 feet. Approach from the east. Wind is favorable there. I can mark LZ with smoke. Chen. Copy all. Stand by. Coming in now. Bay pops smoke. Orange smoke billowing, marking his position, marking the impossible LZ. Then watches the sky, watches for the helicopter, watches for someone to use his technique to save him, the technique he invented, the dive he proved possible, coming back to save him.
He sees the Huey, high overhead, 3,000 feet, circling, then noses over. The dive begins. Bay recognizes it immediately, recognizes the angle, the speed, the profile. That's his dive, executed perfectly. Chen learned well, diving at 70 degrees, accelerating, screaming downward, through Viet Cong fire, trusting the physics, trusting the Huey, trusting Bay's technique. Bay watches the flare, perfect. At 250 feet, maximum pull. The Huey decelerates violently, nose pitches up, rotor disc air braking, speed bleeding off, exactly as designed, exactly as Bay did 2 years ago. The technique saving lives again, saving Bay's life this time. The Huey lands hard. Chen yells, "Load now! 30 seconds!" Bay and his crew sprint to the helicopter, Bay's broken leg screaming. But he runs anyway, reaches the Huey. Crew helps load him. His wounded crew loads, everyone aboard. 28 seconds. Chen pulls collective. The Huey lifts. Not overloaded this time. Normal load. Easier takeoff, but still under fire, still dangerous. Chen translates forward, accelerates low, 60 knots, then pulls, climbs, clears the trees, out, safe. Bay is in the cabin, bleeding, broken, but alive. Saved by his own technique, saved by the dive he invented, saved by another pilot who learned what he taught. The circle is complete. The technique that saved 42 men 2 years ago just saved him. Physics works both directions. The impossible works for everyone who learns it. Chen radios back. Kingfisher 3 extracted, 4 wounded, all alive, heading to hospital. Bay keys his survival radio one last time. Dustoff 17, that was a perfect dive, perfect execution. You did it exactly right.
Thank you. Thank you for learning. Thank you for attempting the impossible. Thank you for saving us. Chen, you taught us, sir. You proved it was possible. I just followed your technique. You made this rescue possible 2 years ago when you invented the dive. I just used what you taught us. You saved yourself today. Your technique saved you. Bay is evacuated to hospital, survives his injuries, recovers over 3 months, returns to flight status, continues flying until 1968, accumulates 1,200 plus combat missions, uses his own dive technique 47 more times, saves 1,300 plus additional lives, becomes legend in Vietnamese Air Force, becomes legend among American pilots who learned from him. In 1970, Bay is awarded the Vietnamese Air Force Distinguished Service Order. The citation reads, "For extraordinary achievement in aerial flight." Captain Bay invented and perfected the steep approach technique that revolutionized helicopter extraction capabilities. His innovation saved thousands of lives and expanded helicopter operational capabilities throughout the Vietnam War. His courage and technical brilliance exemplify the highest traditions of military aviation. The American military awards him the U.S. Air Medal, the citation, for meritorious achievement while participating in aerial flight in Southeast Asia. Captain Bay's development of advanced helicopter approach techniques enabled countless impossible extractions and saved thousands of Allied lives. His innovation and courage under fire distinguished him among all helicopter pilots in the theater. After the war, Bay emigrates to the United States, becomes commercial helicopter pilot, flight instructor, teaches his technique to civilian pilots. The dive becomes standard emergency procedure, not just military, civilian too. Search and rescue, medical evacuation, any situation requiring tight LZ extraction, Bay's dive. The technique that started as desperate innovation, that became military doctrine, that ended as standard practice, taught to every helicopter pilot, saving lives worldwide. In 1995, at Vietnamese American Veterans Conference, Bay meets many of the pilots he trained, pilots who used his technique, who saved lives using his dive. They share stories, compare notes, celebrate the lives saved. One pilot, now Colonel James Chen, US Army retired, says, "Sir, I used your technique 47 times in combat, saved over 1,000 men. I crashed twice attempting it, but saved far more than I lost. Your dive changed everything."
Changed what we thought helicopters could do, changed what pilots were willing to attempt. You made the Huey legendary. Before your dive, the Huey was just a good helicopter. After your dive, it became the helicopter that does impossible things. That's your legacy. You made the impossible possible. Bay responds, "I just calculated the physics. The Huey did the work. The helicopter is tougher than anyone believed. I just proved it. Every pilot who learned the technique proved it again. Every successful extraction proved the Huey could handle it. The helicopter made itself legendary. I just showed what it could do." Another pilot, Warrant Officer Thomas Wade, who was Bay's crew chief on the original dive, says, "Sir, I was terrified that day. Thought you were going to kill us. The dive looked like suicide. But when we landed safely, when we saved those 42 men, I realized you knew exactly what you were doing. You calculated every detail. The dive looked insane, but it was precise, mathematical, controlled. You made the impossible look easy. That's mastery. That's genius. Every pilot who learned from you gained that same mastery. You gave us the tools to save people we couldn't have saved otherwise. That's your gift. That's why we honor you." Bay is quiet for a moment, then says, "I lost 8 crews. 8 helicopters crashed attempting the dive. 23 people died. I taught them the technique and they died using it. That's on me. That's my responsibility. Yes, we saved thousands. Yes, the technique works, but 23 people died. I remember their names, all of them. I carry that. The technique isn't perfect. It's high risk. People died learning it. People died using it. That's the cost of attempting impossible things. That's what I remember most." Chen puts hand on Bay's shoulder, says, "Sir, those 8 crews died attempting to save others. They knew the risks. They chose to try. And the 119 successful extractions saved over 3,000 lives against 23 lost attempting the impossible. That's not a perfect record, but it's a record worth honoring. You gave pilots a choice. Attempt the impossible, rescue, or leave people to die. You gave us the tools to attempt it. Some failed, most succeeded. The technique works more often than it fails. That's all we can ask. You expanded what's possible. You saved thousands. That's your legacy, not the failures, the thousands saved. Today, Bay's dive is taught at every helicopter school, military and civilian. The technique has evolved, been refined.
Made safer through training and technology. But the core remains: steep approach, aggressive flare, energy management, using the helicopter's full capability, the same technique Bay invented in 1963, the same physics, the same calculated risk, the same impossible made possible. The Huey is retired now, replaced by more modern helicopters, but Bay's technique remains, applied to new aircraft, new situations, new impossibilities. The dive that saved 42 men in 1963 has saved hundreds of thousands in the 60 years since, in Vietnam, in every conflict, in civilian emergencies, anywhere helicopters operate and people need rescue from impossible places. Nguyen Van Bay is 88 years old now, retired, living in California, still flies recreationally, still teaches occasionally, still calculates, still looks at terrain and thinks, could I land there? What would the approach require? How steep would I need to dive? When asked what he wants to be remembered for, he says, I want to be remembered for proving that impossible is just difficult, that physics is generous if you understand it, that the Huey was tougher than anyone believed, that desperate situations require desperate innovation, that one person in one moment with one calculation can change everything. That's what happened April 22nd, 1963. I dove, I proved it possible. Others learned, thousands were saved. That's enough. That's what matters. Not me. The lives saved, the impossible extractions, the techniques refined, the legacy of attempting what everyone else refuses. That's what I want remembered. That's the story. The suicidal dive that became standard practice.
The desperate innovation that saved thousands, the moment one pilot calculated the impossible and proved it possible, the technique that made the Huey legendary, not through perfect design, not through superior capability, through one pilot pushing the helicopter past every limit, through proving it could survive, through showing what's possible when you understand physics perfectly and trust the machine completely. Bay's dive, the maneuver that changed everything, the technique that defined the Huey, the impossible made routine, the suicidal made standard, the legacy of one moment when one pilot looked at 42 trapped men and said, I can save them. Let me show you how. That's how one Vietnamese pilot's suicidal dive maneuver made the Huey a legend in combat. Not through combat, through rescue, through innovation. Through refusing to accept impossible, through diving at 70 degrees and proving physics allows miracles, through showing that sometimes the most important thing you can do is attempt what everyone else refuses, and survive, and teach, and save thousands. The dive that changed everything, Bay's approach, the technique that made impossible possible, the legacy that continues, the lives still being saved 60 years later, because one pilot calculated and dove and proved it works and taught the world